Great, thanks Randy. So thanks everybody for turning up. It's great to see a full room. So I'm going to kick off. I'm going to give you a very brief sort of overview of why we actually started this project. And then the guys here are going to talk you through some of the sort of technical solutions that they've been developing and the products. And it's great to be able to tell you, of course, that the products are now actually out there. They're down in the exhibition hall. You can go and see those. I'm sure the guys will point you in that direction. So it's quite nice to be back in San Diego, because it was 4 years ago at this meeting that we had our first sort of structured project meeting around the acoustic tubes. We'd probably had about 6 months or 12 months of sort of pre-discussions around that as well. So we've probably been pushing about 5 years worth of sort of talk and development. So it's great to actually finally be here with a product in front of us, and we're really looking forward to rolling that out this year, starting with our site in Gothenburg in the summer. So just to come back to why we actually did this in the first place, and I think so. Of course, AstraZeneca is going through quite a sort of unique change. We're moving our R&D headquarters down to Cambridge. So we did have quite a unique opportunity of a blank canvas. But coupled with that, we also had a sort of overarching strategy around how we wanted to deliver sort of lead discovery for AstraZeneca in the future. So we have an overarching ambition to generate the highest quality lead molecules for every target, and to do that in less than 12 months. And one aspect of that from sort of sample management was very much that, so this project is around actually delivering one aspect of that, so actually delivering one pillar. There's many other things, and some of you will have heard me talk about them over time, around AI for like medicinal chemistry, automation of chemistry. But this is very much the one sort of foundation technology that we wanted to put in for actual sample management. So that was why we wanted to do it. In terms of what it was that we wanted to do, distilling it down to actual sample management itself. So on the one hand, we wanted to be able to cherry pick any compound for any screen. And on the other hand, we wanted to be able to provide the highest possible assay data to our projects. And we'll talk about both of those things as we go through, and hopefully you'll see that we will actually deliver that. In order to deliver the what, we had to think about the how. We didn't think too much about that 4 or 5 years ago, if I'm perfectly honest. Certainly I didn't. These guys probably did. But we knew that it would involve two things. One, it would involve miniaturization, and that meant that we would have to drive up storage density in order to drive up the cherry picking. And the other one that we were absolutely set on was that we would definitely use acoustic technology, because from our perspective, we felt that offered us the only way through an end-to-end acoustic process to get the highest possible assay data back to our projects. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to come back at the end, and I'm going to talk about the business benefits that we saw. We laid out about 6 or 7 business benefits, areas where we thought if we could develop these products, we would actually have an impact. We think we're going to see all of those come to fruition once we actually roll out the systems later this year. So we think that we'll be able to deliver on everything, and we'll just, again, in order to prep for the Q&A, we'll just give you some guidance on what those areas actually are, and I guess the sorts of areas that we're really interested in for our business. Okay, so just to briefly go through where we were with regards to benefits at the start. So there were 2 things that we talked about. We talked about cherry picking, and we'll be able to do a lot more of that. It's probably fair to say that there wasn't a system in the world that could cope with the amount of cherry picking that we actually wanted to do. I can't remember where it was at the start when we started. It was just something crazy, like about 150,000 a day we wanted to do. Well, I think what you can see here is that we pushed it up probably about 3 or 4 fold over what we can do today, which is a huge step in the right direction, I think. In terms of high quality data, We're not really going to know this until we've got the full system up and running, but we've tried to mimic as best we can the conditions of having a fully acoustic workflow and comparing that with starting from a tube and using some tip-based dispensing. We see about a log difference in terms of the data that we get, which we believe is a log difference shift in the right direction towards a sort of higher quality assay. So we do we do fully expect to see differences in our data, but we expect those to be better. On to some of the other things then that we wanted to do as we sort of came along. So we realized that we were going to create a challenge in terms of how we actually filled the tube for newly synthesized compounds. And whilst we'd love to be in a world in which we're automating flow chemistry and filling a tube that way, it's going to take our chemistry colleagues a long time to catch up in terms of technology. So we had to take their output today from a HPLC output vessel, and we wanted to fully automate getting that into the acoustic tube. So we've been able to do that. I've shown this slide before. We've got this up and running now. We're in the process of just validating it over many, many cycles. The frustrating thing about this is that we could always have done this. We didn't need a change in technology to do this. We just needed to realize that things could be done faster. So that will be that will be an extra. In terms of the miniaturization, and Robin touched about this, so we have chemistry spread across 5 different sites, and we have 3 research sites in which we actually hold compounds and where we actually run assays. And that creates a situation for us where we have to provision samples from remote sites into the test, and that adds, in general, about 2 to 3 days to our turnaround times. And that was something that we wanted to remove. We couldn't remove that unless we did the miniaturization piece. So if you look to our sites in Gothenburg and in Boston, for example, we can now hold in excess of 1 million samples there in roughly the same footprint space where we hold about 100,000. So that means that we can push all of our newly synthesized samples in a fully automated way through our supply chain and out to those sites. So that actually, by the time the scientists on those sites realizes that they actually want to make the compound, that they actually want to test the compound, they're pulling it from their local store. They're not, and we don't have to do this sort of global shipment piece. Coupled with that, of course, once you've got 1 million sort of storage places, we can actually distribute more areas of the actual corporate collection itself. So this is sort of like subsetting, which is really important to us because our different sites have slightly different requirements from the collection. So if it's a CNS pain site, for example, then we'd want sort of low molecular weight set of the collection, and we can now distribute that out to that site so that they actually hold that. So there's this sort of like there's this like decentralizing concept as well, and we'll get that as well now with the storage capacity that we've got on each site. We've talked about conserving sample volume, so we've got about 150,000 compounds in our collection that we consider to be at risk because they're low volume and we haven't got any solid stocks left. By moving to the new tube, of course, that completely removes those compounds from being sort of at risk, and those compounds are now projected to last for somewhere between 15 and 20 years. And as Robin said, this is our sort of long-term solution. The sample, we've always had individually addressable tubes that we've never changed, and this solution will be exactly the same. So some samples will be in these tubes for decades. Finally, from me, just a word on collaboration on major projects. Toby touched on this a little bit at the start. So this is very much from the sort of business perspective and coming into this as a sort of end user. So this is now going back 4 or 5 years and thinking about how we managed to start a project that led to so many technical innovations. If we'd have known that that was what it was going to take, I don't think we would have actually started the project, if I'm perfectly honest. So the most important thing from my perspective is just to understand why. So this is the hook into the overall business strategy. Nobody would do this project if it was just about sample management. So this is about a far bigger corporate strategy, and this is one pillar of that actual strategy. So it's very important, I think, to understand why are you actually doing it. You've got to have some vision of what it's going to be. So this is higher density storage, increased cherry picking, use of acoustics. But that's probably about it, because you don't know what all of the solutions are going to be. And then finally, you've got to restrain, from my perspective, how you're going to do it to only the highest risks at the time. Okay, you are not going to know how you're going to do every single step of this. We didn't know we were going to have this 2D4 barcode. We didn't know what the software solutions were going to be. We did know a couple of things that were really, really important to us around sample integrity, which is why Randy spoke so much about it. And we asked ourselves the question, can we solve those one or two really, really important problems? Once we got confidence that we could, then we moved ahead with the project. And then finally, just a piece on cost, because I get asked loads about cost, particularly around ROI. So ROI is a sort of strange term, I think, for people who are like 15, 10 years away from where the actual revenue in a company comes in. So it's easy to get hung up, I think, on ROI and trying to justify an ROI. From my perspective, if you're going to do sample management at this level, and if you're going to do it, if you're going to do hit discovery at this level, and you're going to do it in a physical environment and not in a virtual environment, there's a cost to that, right? Right? There's like a category cost. It's just going to cost you millions of dollars. Okay, so it's not really about the return on that millions of dollars. It's about whether or not there's a different way to do it. So I would always urge people to think about the opportunity cost and not about the ROI, because you can get really hung up on ROI. And for our part of the business, it just doesn't really make any sense. So do you want to do this? Do you want to do it physically? Do you want to do it virtually? If you're going to do it virtually, remember it's going to cost you millions of dollars with companies like Orion to get a license to do virtual screening. So you've got to play those things out against each other. And with that, I think we're done. Time for questions.